Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam.
Hello students, my name is Ishan Shinolikar and today we will be discussing about the economic system of socialism. Let us start with the objectives of the session. First, we define and explain the fundamental concept of socialism and the key characteristics of this system. Then we analyze the historical development of socialist thought and practice from its theoretical origins to modern implementations. Next, we identify and describe the core principles of socialism, including collective ownership, central planning, and social equality. Further, we try and understand the mechanisms of socialist economic planning and resource allocation systems. Then, we try and evaluate the role of state in socialist economies and compare it with market-based economies. Next, we compare and contrast different types of socialist systems and their variations across countries and time periods. Next, we critically assess the disadvantages and advantages of the system and understand its theoretical foundation. Finally, we analyze the relevance of socialist principles, its contemporary mixed economies, and their impact on modern business practices. Let us start with the introduction to socialism. Socialism is an economic system characterized by collective or government ownership of the means of production, centralized economic planning, and the goal of achieving greater economic equality and social welfare. Unlike capitalism, where private individuals and businesses own and control productive resources, socialism emphasizes community or state control over economic activity to serve the collective good rather than individual profit. The fundamental premise of socialism is that the means of production, including factories, land, natural resources, and major industry, should be owned collectively by society as a whole, typically through government ownership and control. The collective ownership is intended to ensure that the benefits of economic activity are distributed more equitably among the members of society rather than concentrated among private owners of capital. For the BBA students particularly, understanding this system is crucial because many countries have incorporated socialist elements into their economic system, creating mixed economies that combine market mechanisms with socialist principles. Additionally, many modern business concepts such as corporate social responsibility, stakeholder capitalism, and sustainable business practices have roots in socialist thinking about the social purpose of economic activity. Socialist theory argues that capitalism inherently creates inequality and exploitation because those who own capital can extract surplus value from workers' labor. Socialists contend that collective ownership eliminates the exploitation by ensuring that all members of society benefit from productive activity. The system prioritizes social needs over individual profit maximization, aiming to provide essential goods and services to all citizens regardless of their ability to pay. The relationship between socialism and business is complex. While traditional socialism may limit private enterprise, many modern socialist influence systems allow the private businesses within the framework of social regulation and public provision of key services. Understanding these dynamics is essential for business administration students who will operate in diverse global economic environment. Let us now look at the historical development of socialism. The development of socialism thought and practice spans over 2 centuries, evolving from theoretical writings to real world interpretations and implementations with varying degrees of success and failure. Early socialist thought was seen in 18th and 19th centuries. The intellectual roots of socialism can be traced to Enlightenment thinkers who critiqued the social inequalities emerging from early capitalism. Thinkers like Henry de Saint-Simon, Charles Fourier, and Robert Owen developed utopian socialist ideas that emphasized cooperation over competition and social planning over market mechanisms. These early socialists believed that society could be rationally organized to eliminate poverty and inequality. Then we come across scientific socialism, which is the mid-19th century. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels developed what they called scientific socialism, which provided a systematic critique of capitalism and a theory of historical development. Marx's analysis in Das Kapital argued that capitalism contained inherent contradictions that would lead to its eventual replacement by socialism. The Marxist framework became the theoretical foundation for most subsequent socialist movements. Early socialist movements were seen in the late 19th and early 20th century, which saw the growth of socialist political parties and labor movements across Europe. These movements sought to achieve socialist goals through democratic participation and gradual reform rather than revolution. The social democratic parties of Germany, Sweden, and other European countries exemplified this approach. Revolutionary socialism. The Russian Revolution of 1917 marked the first successful attempt to establish a socialist state. Vladimir Lenin adapted Marxist theory to Russian conditions, creating the foundation of Soviet-style socialism. This model emphasized rapid industrialization, central planning, and one-party political control. Diversification of socialist models, which was seen in the 20th century, we saw that different countries developed various approaches to socialism, including Yugoslavia's worker self-management system, China's gradual market reform while maintaining Communist Party control, and the democratic socialism of Scandinavian countries. These variations demonstrated that socialism could take many different forms. If we look at the modern developments, the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked the end of Cold War division between capitalist and socialist systems. However, socialist ideas continue to influence economic policy in many countries, particularly in areas like healthcare, education, and social welfare. Countries like China and Vietnam have developed market socialism that combines socialist political control with market-oriented reform. Now let us move to the core principles and characteristics of socialism. Understanding the fundamental principles of socialism is essential particularly for business students, as these principles continue to influence economic policy and business regulation in many countries around the world. First is collective ownership. The cornerstone of socialist theory is collective ownership of the means of production. This includes factories, farms, mines, transportation systems, and other productive assets. Collective ownership can take various forms, including direct state ownership, worker cooperatives, or community ownership. The goal is to ensure that productive assets serve the common good rather than generating private profit. Next is central planning. Socialist systems typically rely on central economic planning rather than market mechanisms to allocate resources and coordinate economic activity. Government planning agencies determine whether goods and services should be produced, in what quantities, and how they should be distributed. This planning is intended to ensure that economic activity serves social priorities rather than individual profit motives. Next is economic equality. Socialism aims to reduce economic inequality by ensuring that benefits of production are distributed more equally among the members of society. This may involve progressive taxation, comprehensive social services, and limits on individual wealth accumulation. The goal is to provide all citizens with access to basic necessities and opportunities for social advancement. Further, we have social welfare. So, the socialist systems prioritize the provision of essential services like healthcare, education, housing, and social security as public goods rather than market commodities. These services are typically funded through taxation and provided free or at a lower cost to ensure universal access regardless of individual ability to pay. Next, we have democratic participation. Many socialist theories emphasize democratic participation in economic decision making. This can include worker participation in management decisions, community control over local economic development, and democratic input into national economic planning. The goal is to give ordinary citizens a voice in economic decisions that affect their lives. Looking at the next feature, that is full employment. So, socialist systems typically commit to providing employment for all citizens who are able and willing to work. This may involve government job creation programs, public works projects, or guaranteed employment schemes. Full employment is seen as both economic goal and social right. Elimination of exploitation. So, socialist theory argues that capitalism allows owners of capital to exploit workers by paying them less than the value they create. Collective ownership is intended to eliminate this exploitation by ensuring that workers receive the full value of their productive contribution. Now, let us look at socialist economic planning and resource allocation. The mechanisms through which socialist economies organize production and distribute goods and services differ fundamentally from market-based systems. Understanding these mechanisms is important for business students who may encounter planned economic elements in mixed economies or when doing business in countries with significant state economic control. In traditional socialist systems, central planning committees develop comprehensive economic plans that specify production targets for different industries, allocate resources among competing uses, and coordinate economic activity across sectors. These plans typically cover multiple years and are designed to achieve specific economic and social objectives. Socialist planners use sophisticated mathematical models to analyze the relationship between different sectors of the economy. For example, we have input-output tables which show how the output of one industry serves as an input to another industry, thus helping planners to ensure that production plans are actually internally consistent and that adequate supplies are available for all activities. Planners develop material balance sheets for key commodities to ensure that supply equals demand. These balances account for production, imports, exports, and various uses of each commodity. The goal is to avoid shortages or surpluses that could disrupt economic activity. In planned economies, prices are typically set by the government authorities rather than determined by market forces. Prices may be based on production costs, social priorities, and planning objectives rather than supply and demand. This can lead to a situation where prices do not reflect true scarcity or consumer preferences. Instead of using market prices to allocate resources, socialist systems may use administrative allocation, rationing systems, or priority schemes. Essential goods may be distributed through rationing, while other goods may be allocated based on social or political priorities. Socialist enterprises are typically evaluated based on their ability to meet production targets and social objectives rather than profitability. Performance indicators may include output quantities, employment levels, social service provided, or contribution to national development goals. Planned economies face particular challenges in promoting innovation and technological development. Without market incentives, innovation may be driven by government research programs, international competition, or social recognition rather than profit potential. The effectiveness of these planning mechanisms have varied significantly across different countries and time periods, with some achieving rapid industrialization while others experience chronic shortages and inefficiencies. Now let us look at the role of state in socialist economy. In a socialist economy, the state plays a much more extensive role than a capitalist economy, serving not only as a regulator but as the primary owner, planner, and coordinator of economic activity. The government directly owns and operates major industries including manufacturing, mining, transportation and utilities. State-owned enterprises are managed by government-appointed officials who are responsible for meeting production targets and social objectives rather than maximizing profits. Their ownership structure is intended to ensure that economic activity serves public rather than private interests. The state develop comprehensive economic plans that coordinate activity across all sectors of the economy. Government planning agencies analyze economic data sets and set the production targets, allocate resources and monitor performance. This central coordination is intended to eliminate the waste and inefficiency that socialists argue result from market competition. Socialist states typically operate extensive welfare systems that provide universal health care, education, housing assistance and social security. The government ensures that basic needs are met regardless of individual economic circumstances. This may involve subsidizing essential goods, providing free services or guaranteeing minimum income levels. The state often serves as the employer of last resort, providing jobs for all citizens who want to work. Government employment may include not only public administration but also state-owned enterprises, public works projects and social services. Labor allocation may be planned centrally, with workers assigned jobs based on economic needs and social priority. Government agencies make major investment decisions about infrastructure, industrial development and technological advancement. These decisions are based on social priorities and long-term development objectives rather than short-term profitability. The state may prioritize heavy industry, education and military development based on national goals. The state typically controls international trade through state trading organization and exchange controls. Trade decisions are made based on national economic planning rather than market opportunities, and may prioritize self-sufficiency or strategic relationship over economic efficiency. Beyond direct ownership and planning, the state regulates private economic activity that may be allowed within the socialist framework. This can include price controls, production quotas, licensing requirements and restriction on private accumulation of wealth. The extensive role of state in socialist economies create both opportunities and challenges. While state control can enable rapid mobilization of resources for national priorities, it can also lead to bureaucratic inefficiency, lack of innovation and reduced individual economic freedom. Now let us quickly go through the types of socialism very quickly. Just as capitalism takes various forms, socialism systems have evolved into different models that reflect varying approaches to collective ownership, economic planning and political organization. Understanding these variations is important for business students who are operating or who will be operating in diverse global environments. So first is the Marxist-Leninist socialism, which is exemplified by former Soviet Union. It features centralized political control by a communist party, comprehensive state ownership and detailed central economic planning. All decisions are made by government planners. This system achieved rapid industrialization but at the cost of consumer goods. Similar to that, we have different systems. Another like this was democratic system. Countries like Sweden, Norway and Denmark have developed democratic socialist systems that combine extensive welfare states with democratic political systems and mixed economies. These countries maintain competitive markets while providing universal healthcare, education and social services. High taxation funds generous social problems, but private enterprise operates alongside public sector involvement. Next, we have market socialism, which is adopted by countries like Yugoslavia and China that combine socialist political control with market mechanisms for resource allocation. Worker-owned cooperatives or state enterprise compete in markets, but major decisions remain under government control. This model attempts to capture the efficiency and benefits of markets while maintaining social ownership. We also have African socialism, where many post-colonial African countries developed indigenous forms of socialism that emphasize tradition, communal values, cooperative development, and resistance to Western capitalist influence. Countries like Tanzania under Julius Nyerere promoted familyhood policies that emphasized rural cooperatives and collective agriculture. We also have Arab socialism, where several Middle East countries developed Arab socialistic models that combine socialist economies with Arab nationalism and Islamic values. Countries like Egypt and Syria have nationalized major industries while maintaining culture and religious traditions. We also have eco-socialism, where contemporary variant emphasizes environmental sustainability and argues that capitalist growth imperative is incompatible with ecological limits. Eco-socialists advocate for democratic planning and prioritize environmental protection and sustainable development over economic growth. Further, we have libertarian socialism. This approach emphasizes worker control over democratic participation while opposing centralized state power. Anarcho-syndicalists and other libertarian socialists favor worker cooperatives, community ownership, and horizontal rather than hierarchical organization. Social democracy says that while not strictly socialist, social democratic parties in Europe have implemented many socialist policies within democratic capitalist frameworks. These systems feature strong labor unions, comprehensive welfare states, and significant government involvement in the economy while maintaining private property rights. Each variant reflects different cultural, historical, and political circumstances, demonstrating that socialism, like capitalism, can take many forms depending on local conditions and values. Let us now look at the advantages and disadvantages of socialism. So, among the advantages, we have economic equality, universal basic services, economic stability, long-term planning, elimination of exploitation, social solidarity, and so on. But there are also some disadvantages of socialism, such as economic inefficiency, lack of innovation, bureaucratic problems, limited individual freedom, incentive problems, political concentration. So, based on these characteristics advantages, you will be able to understand and relate to the contemporary relevance and modern applications of socialism and look at the real world scenarios from the perspective of a socialist economic system. This is crucial for BBA students, as we discussed earlier, who will be operating in global environments which typically involve a mixture of capitalist and socialist economic systems. We will also learn about a mixed economic system purely in another session. From this session, you will be able to understand the socialist system separately and its nuances and characteristics in detail. I hope you enjoyed and understood the session. Thank you so much.